In the summer we were lovers, with a flame our hearts would burn, a flame the autumn would smother, and leave this heart to yearn forever blue.
Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to another episode of Motor Concierge, and I'm here for another amazing adventure here in our hometown Jūrmala, Latvia, to end this beautiful summer season what we have had so far. Yesterday and this whole week has been completely tropical. We have had heat, we had immense rainfall yesterday, which basically paralyzed our whole filming, but nevertheless the guys from RE Photography and RD Works did a tremendous job during the last 2 days when it came to the photo shooting despite the weather. I'll leave the link below to their photographies, and today we're here to end this season with a banger, with one of the most iconic cars I have ever driven in, the BMW M3 E36. It's crazy hot. It's absolutely crazy hot. I have to take off my gilet and drive in a t-shirt because it's literally tropics out here. Well, if you are like me, born somewhere in the late 70s or mid 80s, probably at some point of your life the chances are quite high that you had a poster hanging on your bedroom's wall of exactly this blue colored BMW M3 E36 somewhere in your house. And for me, coming from the other side of the Iron Curtain, you can imagine that $36,000 at that time, which I think was the launch price of the M3 E36, it was completely unattainable money. It was something surreal. The minimum salary in Latvia, for example, at that time was $50 to $60 a month. So when you as a kid have this maybe one tiny chance and glimpse to have this car seen somewhere in your childhood, how do you not fall in love with it until you have the days, the means, the chance, or your adulthood to actually drive this completely surreal piece of German engineering? And now 30 years later, when I have had the chance to drive this car for the last week, people, friends, and ask, is this really M3? Where did you get M3? And wow, I mean, I couldn't tell. And that is somewhat true. At least here in somewhat Eastern Europe, we have a little bit of stigma when it comes to the E36. The basic models were quite often the first pick for my generation's youth as a first car, and they were quite a lot abused in the drift builds, drag builds, winter beaters, street rats, and so on and so on. So seeing an actual M3 these days is somewhat impossible, unless it's some car meet, unless it's some specific event. Having this car as a daily, which was at that time intended by BMW, especially in the US, it's quite rare. And 30 years later, I definitely see E36 climbing the Mount Everest of the 90's BMW automaking models and lineups as one of the top produced and top desired cars 30 years later these days. When talking about the Mount Everest of BMW 90's production, I will try to build my own, but I'm gonna get a lot of heat, so I'll leave your opinion maybe in the comments if you may. Basis BMW X5. It's a phenomenal car. It's a staple for BMW, but I think it's simply too late in the 90's. It's more of an influence after the millennium. Z3, interesting, specific, fun car, but really narrow niche, narrow interest group. E36 3rd series, similar story. It takes 5 too late in the 90s, much more influential in the 2000s. 7 series, I have mentioned in the story about E34. It's an absolutely phenomenal car. I love it, but I also have to admit, when it comes to the 90s and the premium luxury, it has, or it did, lose its battle to the W140 Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Then this particular E36, or perfectly in the M3 version, almost at the top, at least on my Mount Everest, and of course at the peak being the E39 5 Series, one of the greatest BMW productions ever, especially of course the M5, which is I think arguably one of the best cars that BMW has ever produced in its timeline. And for this particular video, I have to say absolute thank you to my partner, Youngtimercar.eu. They are phenomenal guys who are absolute experts when it comes to Porsche and BMW imports from Japan. They have been super nice to lend me this E36 M3 in a absolutely pristine condition. It only has 31,000 kilometers on its dash. It still has the factory smell. I'll leave the link below. If you're interested, you can buy this car. You can take a look at their current collection, or in case if you're looking for something special, you can find a specific option to import the car of your dream, the spec of your dream. And they have been so far totally, you know, a dream come true partnership for me. You know, sometimes I hear people telling me, oh, you know, it's E36 M3, how do you distinguish it from 318? I don't. It's subtle, it's sleek, it's a little bit incognito. No one knows really, no one expects you to deliver anything from this car. But as soon as you downshift, .7k RPM, almost 300 horsepower, it immediately gives you a whole different sensation. You are master of everything. It has no nannies, it has no support, it has no help. You have the steering wheel, pedals, brakes. It gives me really the Porsche GT3 touring vibes. It's an absolute incognito beast after all of these 30 years, and I absolutely love it. And for my US audience who is watching my small YouTube channel, and I'm super thankful for that, I actually never knew that M3 initially didn't come to the United States. Reason for that being that the previous M3 generation, the E30 sales were quite sluggish, and at some point the BMW North America were considering maybe to remove M brand as such from the market. So the E36 M3 came only 3 years after its launch in 1994, if I'm correct. And initially, as said, it was a little bit of a dilemma. What is this car? It was far away from the E30 racing pedigree. It was much more as a daily driver, and the sales after the launch, at least on a coupe, were so skyrocketing that the BMW had to keep up with the production. And at some point they also launched the four-door saloon version for the US market, which at least in the United States sold almost as good as the coupe version. And I think these days, of course, it's quite rare. I think it's 4-to-1 coupe versus saloon. So if you ever see E36 M3 saloon version, it's quite the rare one, and I think the rarest one, of course, is the GT version, but that's a whole nother story for the limited racing market in Europe. But for the United States, the M3, both pre-facelift and facelift, came with a significantly weaker engine than the European version, and that's why I get also the sentiment might not be as good as you could wish after those 30 years for some. However, when it came to the maintenance, which is, you know, no secret, BMW, high RPM engines over the history, especially with the Venas, are maybe not the most reliable and the cheap ones to fix. However, the US version was much more practical one than the European one. At the end, I would say horsepower per dollar cost per horsepower after 30 years of whether US version or whether European version, at the end, maybe, just maybe, and maybe some of you guys have driven the car in the US, you can tell me, United States could have come as a true victor of this debate of who had the best version, whether it was the European one or the US one. It's been absolutely a blast so far, being in my home country, in the wonderful cars, especially this one. I'll miss it probably until next year. It's an absolutely amazing car. Really, once again, speechless, but this is a different type of being speechless. You know, I have decided to do a little midnight run just to clear my head off after this unbelievable week with the BMW M3, and also after this unbelievable season here in Latvia, where we were filming the 90's episodes. When it comes to the M3, for me personally, when it comes to drivability, it's the closest thing that I think you can get to Porsche. It's just phenomenal. And I get why people who have once driven the magical M lettering car or the M brand car or the M spec car, whatever we call it, why they love it for generations. It's completely unbelievable, and the emotions, the euphoric emotions it gives to me, I think they're very similar to what this car brought probably to the first owner 30 years ago. And it's simply phenomenal if you ask me. And for those who have managed so far in the video, I just want to tell you guys, I have also a little bit of a bittersweet feeling. I have to leave my beautiful and lovely hometown back to Western Europe and for my work, and I will most likely be a little bit off for a couple of weeks or maybe month, because I have quite a lot of developments personally, positive ones, both when it comes to career and personal life. So I just wanted to say thank you for, you know, you spending your time watching my videos. I'm super happy to produce them, and stay around. I'm 100% sure that the autumn season will come with a bang. I have a lot in mind, I have a lot in opportunities, and I think it's gonna be even better than what we did this summer. I will tell you bye for now, and hope to see you all guys soon. Ciao!